Hey guys, it's Ryan, and this week it's two of my favourite things, homebrew and Lizardmen. I mentioned in the last Lizardman video that I had worked on a homebrew Arcane journal, and well, this is a video covering that. The goal of this video is to finally get it out there, generate some conversation about it, and try to get the community playing it. I feel a bit ashamed to say I haven't actually run it yet, so think of this video as release 0.1, and I will want to keep it up to date if I can get some buy-in from my local community, or at least somewhere, and maybe hope we can improve some of the legacy factions, because GW certainly won't. If you like this idea and you're a fan of Infinity or the occasional old world video, please let me know in the comments below, and like and subscribe for more. Now let's talk more about my thoughts behind the video, and then we'll get into the changes. I started writing this doc in October as an on and off hobby project that I tend to start up and do quite frequently, but it was really finished and fleshed out in December. However, this is around the time of the things that came up in the community discourse as more Arcane journal comes out, and that was, should an Arcane journal, quote, fix an army? With the Empire and High Elf Arcane journal, who knows, but recently I came to the opinion that an Arcane journal maybe shouldn't if the army is largely fine, but it definitely should add a new and interesting way to play the army. With making a fan-made Arcane journal for a legacy army, I am aware the question becomes, why not just play a previous edition? And I probably could, and probably will if I want the true Lizard experience, but until then, I want to talk about Lizardmen in the old world, a system I'm currently playing. While this project started as a bit of an attempt to fix the Lizardmen, but by the end of it, it was really something I liked the idea of playing and building lists for, and I think this would offer new stuff for the Lizardman community to enjoy. Hopefully it's actually considered good, hopefully people enjoy it, and hopefully I can get something like a battle report with it on the channel. Like most homebrew videos, this is more a bit of a will and a dream. I want to preface this section that if there is one part of the document you can ignore, if you want, it's this. This entire Arcane journal was written without this in mind, and the Errata section is my thoughts on what Lizardmen could really do to get us in a better position without touching points or army composition. You can do just this or just the Arcane journal, whatever, it doesn't have a huge bearing on other. Although edit, it looks like the Square Base guys have very much come up with something quite similar. As such, I'm going to shout that out. That's much lighter touch than what this section will be, but it does a lot for the Lizards, so check it out in the link below. Now let's talk about my updates. Ripperdactyls and Pterodons are very close to being very good units. Pterodons lack all damage after drop rocks are away, and the Rippers are feral, literally, but do enough damage that really impetuous is the problem. So what do I suggest to make them just a little bit better? Simply two things each. Instead of hand weapons, they get obsidian tipped talons, which are AP -1 hand weapon. This helps them hugely, and means they can actually do damage against something with armor and a shield. To improve Pterodon's lack of damage, I want to up it to 2 attacks. Now yes, this moves it closer to Rippers, but Rippers get more combat stuff and will always just pull ahead of them in terms of damage, but I want the Pterodons to have at least 3 attacks total for being 30 points a model. Finally, I want to give Ripperdactyls terror. It seems like a fun change, and it means they can maybe break stuff and chase them down. That seems thematic for them. Overall, this doesn't push them towards Pegasus Knight level, but it pushes them to a fast skirmish cav that the Lizards really want. Swamp them with skinks, then have the Pterodons drop rocks and Rippers in the flank. By the time your opponent charges anything, they should feel like a forced march through the jungle. I really like Bastillodons, although I enjoy using the Stegodons more. The laser beam is cool, but the Archaeosotic has always been a bit crap. Amazingly, in most editions it appeared in, it was the worst choice, even into AS. That's impressive, GW. So we're going to fix this twofold. The range is going to be fixed to 6 inches for slithering serpents, and it's always going to wound on a 6+, even if a target's toughness would not allow this. This puts it in the same rule as Poison Wind, and I like that as a concept here. The snakes should both be highly venomous and a little magical. Troglodons need a lot of help, like 50 point cheapers, and they're close to being fine. Remove the Oracle and 50 points to just be that wee bit better. I really want feral dinosaurs, but I'm avoiding point changes here. I really don't want to touch that for now. What I'm suggesting is that it should be a behemoth, since it's literally the same kit as the Carnosaur, and we're going to give the Oracle access to a custom spell lore I wrote, one that's based on buffing and a few attacking spells, which should make the whole thing feel a bit better. I could be convinced to make it a character who can be upgraded. The weapon skill for defending against the attacks really should be on the Troglodon. It should have a better spit attack and far more than 3 attacks. Really, it's bad enough that I need more fundamental changes, and if you have suggestions, leave them below and I'll probably add them. I really dig the model on this one, but it's just not there. Stegodons are perfect with only one note. Engine of the God is the worst it's been in any edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Again, impressive. To fix this, remove the needless restriction of the ability so that you need 2 of them to get any bonus. Simple. Salamanders have also been absolutely the worst they've been since Warhammer Fantasy Battle days. I am saying that a lot, and honestly, bring back the ability of them to be pseudo war machines. So Fire Breath is going from only a breath attack to having the Column of Fire rule. So you would pick one when you get to shoot, either a strength 5 breath attack or a weaker but 15-inch plus Column of Fire with Cumbersome. This should now make it a consideration for being brought in the army. Razordons aren't currently awful, but they could be better, so I'm going to change this multiple shots D3 to need more nails to go back to previously how it was in 8th, so it's actually a bit better now. This largely is undoing a boring change that was made to them for no reason other than to possibly deter players from playing Lizardmen in the old world. Now the Slann change is the big one. Slann is fine on paper, but in practice it's pretty meh for a 275 point monster caster, and I'm like 90% sure you can get an elf on a dragon for the same cost. Sure, we can be ethereal, but you can do cooler stuff in elves. Anyway, to the biggest change I think most Lizardmen players will miss is the ability for the Slann to join the Temple Guard. So I'm reading the Palanquin rule from 6th or 8th, I think. Basically, this allows a Slann on a 60mm base to join the Temple Guard. It must be placed in the centre of the second rank of troops and can only be in the front rank if there is 3 troops or left. Even then, it will move to the centre and other models move to the side. Now, this is where you ask, well, it's not in the fighting rank. I can't challenge it, target it, and you're not wrong. That's the bonus, but it does come with all the downsides of a caster being in a unit in melee. It's not like you could challenge it out anyway, since every Temple Guard would be able to accept the challenge instead, fighting literally to the last lizard if they have to. The last advantage of this ability is that he counts as being in the front rank for the purposes of spellcasting and magical item usage, which means you can lob assailant spells but not your bad weapons, which is only kind of buffs, but the Slann is still a large target and the unit is susceptible to panic and shooting. It's a strong ability, but I don't think it fixes a lot of the Slann weaknesses in regard to casting, and will probably still make it fairly vulnerable, although when not in a unit I want to give it back the 360 degree vision arc for casting, because it always should have been Monstrous Infantry, not Monstrous Creature. The final and tiny one I wanted to add was that Cold-Blooded ignores terror from break tests. A nice little simple fix that doesn't add much, and it doesn't really subtract from much either. Now onto the Arcane Journal, and it's not one without 2 Armies of Infamies. For this, I could have copied 6th and gone with the Red Host of Tehenuin, which I kinda did, and the Army of the Southlands, which is just a different set of a skink list. So that idea was out. Instead, I'm going to present you with 2 Armies of Infamies, the Wardens of the Geomantic Web, an elite source and spellcaster focused army, and the Skink Warhost, an army all around skink and skink accessories. First up, let's look at the Wardens of the Geomantic Web, starting at the characters. The army must include at least 1 Old Blood or Slann. This army is essentially fulfilling the archetype of a royal host / clan army. The king is in charge and he is unhappy about being aroused, sort of deal. This does allow for 2+ Slanns, but it to be honest. Just because it's doable doesn't mean I think it will actually be done. Next up, 0 to 2 Skink Priests per 1000 points. Alongside Scar Veterans, they can be your battle standard bearer if you wish, as so can Slans. And that rounds out a fairly light character section. Core is where the eliteness shows up, with the army requiring at least 1 unit of Temple Guards to go alongside your at least 1 Lord level character. If you want to pair these two up, that would be incredibly thematic. Temple Guard here exists to act as your Chaos Warrior elite core that is here to hold while bigger, cooler stuff does things. To further the Chaos Warrior comparison, our chosen equivalents are the Star Chamber Guardians, are 0 to 1 per 1000 points, and are pretty much chosen with spicier halberds. I'll get to that in a bit. This exists to basically cement this army as an infantry army. In general, a more elite unit to grind down the foes. Think weapon skill 5, AP 2 halberds with magical attacks and ward saves. To improve the list, we have 0 to 1 per 1000 point Skink Skirmishers, although I could be convinced just to drop the point restriction on them or move them into rare or special, but they are here because you need Skinks in every Lizardman army. Finally, you can have any number of Source Warriors. Special, I think, is where a bit more fun with looser restrictions on Steg and Bastiladons with 0 to 1 per 1000 points and 0 to 2 per 1000 points respectively, and this section lets you spend up to 66% of your points here for a theoretical minimum list of heroes, 500 points of core, and then all the big dinos. Additionally, you can take any number of Croxigors and Cobran Riders, and finally Temple Guard Riders, another unique unit for the army, 0 to 1 per Temple Guard. They are, as you expect, Temple Guard on old ones, designed to be a grinding heavy cavalry that wants to be stuck in, kind of similar but less bulky than Demigryph Knights. Finally, Rare has the Skink accessories with Hunting Packs, Troglodons, and Riders. Nice to spice up your list, but the Special and Core is where it's really at. That is overall a cool army list I'd like to play without the special rules, but the special rules are the better bits, and we have 3. The first is return to a concept we've had in the past and even has a character, the Eternity Warden. 1 source hero per army, either Old Blood or Veteran, can be the Eternity Warden. Any unit it joins gains Veteran, and it gets a free magical halberd. Finally, they get Stubborn, Shield Wall, and Guardian, so they can slot nicely into the Temple Guard as needed, which is kind of how I see this list being used alongside Battle Standard Bearers, maybe on their own on a Carnosaur, or leading a gaggle of Cold Ones on a Cold One himself. If you really want a Death Star, units of like 15 Temple Guard, him and a Slan to make a brick that just won't move with Veteran, Leadership 9, and a Battle Standard Bearer nearby or within. Infused spawning is how we make ourselves a bit better at casting, as once per turn any wizard who is a large target, near a large target, or within a unit of 10 or larger may roll an additional d6 for casting and dispelling and drop the lowest, which really helps cement us getting our spells off, and Arcane Vassal should reclaim a bit of magical control. Speaking of, standards of the old ones allow Battle Standard Bearers and those who can purchase magical banners and pay 25 points to gain the Arcane Vassal special rule. They should really help Slan's reach. Additionally, they have +1 combat res, which for a block infantry and cavalry army 100% should be having, meaning a brick of Temple Guards or any unit a Battle Standard Bearer could attach to with magical banners could reach 7 standard combat res with only 1 rank, really helping step up our infantry game. Overall, you can kind of see how this army wants to build itself towards Saurus and big monsters, which many should love. The next army, and probably the one everyone will love competitively, is the Skink Warhost, or please buy 120 Skinks. This is another infantry focused army, but it can still bring many stripes of dinos. We once again start with the characters with the requirement for 1+ Skink Priests, the spiritual and intellectual leaders behind the Skink Warhost. And if you think a certain follower of Sotek can lead this, yes, them too, but we'll get to them in a bit. Skink Chiefs and Skink Stalkers can be taken in abundance. Skink Stalkers are basically Elven Waystalkers, but as Skinks, since I wanted a new non-name character in one of our armies. 0 to 2 Source Heroes per 1000 points if you want some bulk, and finally 0 to 1 Troglodons per 1000 points, and they, alongside Scar Veterans and Skink Chiefs, can be Battle Standard Bearers. As a character, they will get some customization options available, but again, that's for later. Core is pretty simple, with Skink cohorts returning from 8th, Jungle Storms and Skirmishers may be taken in abundance. You may take 0 to 1 skinked Horn 1 riders per 1000 points. These are like Cold 1 riders, but sans stupid, are faster, but still heavy cavalry with the ability to skirmish a little better since they're skinks. And finally, the main reason I made this Army of Infamy, 0 to 1 red crested skinks per skink chief with a red crest rule, which I'll get to in a minute. What are red crested skinks? Well, they are skinks with furious charge, poison weapons, and access to great weapons, and also some minor stuff I'll get to in a bit. They are your hammer, your fast moving lads who wish to do some damage. Strength 3, mind you, but damage nonetheless. Really, this was the first unit I modernised, so it had to come somewhat core to the Warhost. In special, you may take riders, Croxigors, red crested skinks, and chameleon skinks as much as you'd like, with 0 to 2 stegodons and 0 to 2 bastillodons, and 0 to 1 hunting packs per 1000 points. And finally, with rare, you may take Temple Guard if you want some heavy infantry or something. Now, the special rules are really where the army can sustain itself and have non-mediocre leadership. The first one is explicitly around spellcasting, allowing 0 to 1 per 1000 point skinks to become a level 3 wizard, and 0 to 1 per army become a level 4. We also allow for level 2 on oracles and access to high magic for both skink characters. This allows us to play at level 4 and not have to worry about having a slan. Fun fact, I came up with this just before the Skulls event at Warhammer World, recommending the same thing for their match play, so pat myself on the back. Impromptu Authority allows skinks heroes, which is priests and chiefs, to take an additional 25 points of magic items and let the oracles take 50 points of magic items as well. Finally, it lets skinks chiefs and priests have leadership 8 to actually lead and not break all the time like goblins without a warband. Next up is the fun one, Red Crested, a port from 6 once again. 0 to 2 units or characters per 1000 points may be given this ability. It grants the user Hatred Skaven, move through cover, and an immunity to poison attacks. It also lets the characters take the Blessing of Sotek without counting it against their Sacred Spawning count, but they still have to pay for it, and 15 points for the Red Crest ability. It also costs 2 points per model on non-character units. Basically, you give this to skink cohorts, Horn 1 riders, or whatever skink you want to be fast and hate Skaven. Finally is something I thought that would get me around the idea of mixing skinks and crocs directly, and that is drafted cohort. Basically, skink cohorts are regimental and detachment units, and Croxigors and hunting packs gain the detachment rule so they can fight alongside their skinky brothers. I like this from a rank and flank point of view and should allow for more fun stuff. While I know people will probably spam skink skirmishers, hopefully more will want to run the fast and agile red crested skinks, ranks of poison arrows from the cohorts, and flanking great weapons of the Croxigors. We've had new armies now, what about units to put in them? What I've added for this book is 3 returning named characters, 1 for each Lizardman race, 1 new character unit, and a gaggle of new infantry and cavalry. No big monsters, not gonna lie, I did not want to try and get the Dreadsaurian in the old world. Starting off, we have the mean, probably green, very dead, and a bit of a prick, the venerable Lord Croak. Croak is our name's slan. Why? Well, he has a model and he's likely to come back or be able to get a hold of. Looking at his stats, he was never really athletic, and yes, while a spring chicken for a long dead frog, he's not winning any 100-meter sprints. We see Croak with a 1 in his move, BS, and weapon skill, which is to be expected. He's dead, but he does have some muscles with strength 4, toughness 5, and 6 wounds. That's right, humans, a dead frog is tankier than you. He has a hand weapon, but more interestingly are his array of abilities in his Golden Death Mask and his Amulet of Itza. The former inflicts a -1 to hit in combat and shooting when targeting Lord Croak. The latter grants him MR2 just in case you think you can blast him away. He gets a full whack of special rules as well, with Close Order, Cold-Blooded, Fly 6, Large Target, Fear, Unbreakable, and Palanquin. In terms of new rules, he has a couple. First, he is a level 4 wizard and only knows 1 spell. Deliverance of Itza. This is a magic missile that targets every enemy unit within range within 12, 18 or 24 inches depending on how well you roll, and will do 2d6 strength 4 hits, but if you're something unnatural like undead, it's 3d6 hits. There are also some notes on how magic resistance and other casting malices will apply. He doesn't get that great amount of spells, but he gets one that can decimate other units as needed, as well as him being a level 4 caster. He can turn around and prevent other spells going off really easily. Eternity Gardens give all Saurus warriors within command range stubborn, and all Temple Guard within command range unbreakable, to show how he invigorates the Saurus to fight for him. Being a first generation Slan on a 2+, he ignores a miscast. But he is so old and venerable, if he dies, your opponent gets 200 additional victory points. Might add some more buffs to this, and in 6th it was like the culmination of 4 other skills in increasing power, so I'll look for feedback first. The Spirit of Lord Kroak means that only level 3 plus casters and Fated Dispels may attempt to dispel Deliverance of Itza. And finally, the Supreme Shield of the Old One is a 3+ ward against all damage. Kroak is an expensive missile that should dominate magic somewhat, but will need support. Worth 400 points, maybe? It's a start. You can't have a skink warhost without Skink Moses. Tehenowin is the prophet of Sotek. He keeps his fat 40x40mm base. He's not really meant to join anything except for jungle swarms. He is a level 3 wizard with the lore of the jungle, the new Lizardmen lore I came up with, and has the usual lot of rules in Arcane Vassal, Cold-Blooded, Immunity to Psychology, Red Crested, and Blessed Spawning of Sotek. As mentioned earlier, Red Crested is immunity to poison attacks, move through cover, and hatred, and you'll see that in a bit, but the Blessed Spawning of Sotek is just Furious Charge. He has Scaly Skin, Blade of the Serpent Tongue, Tide of Serpents, and the Plaque of Sotek. The Blade of Serpent Tongue is a poison blade that causes fear in Skaven, and gets a +1 strength on the charge. Tide of Serpents is an extra d6 attacks at initiative 1, weapon skill 2, and strength 2 with poison attacks. Plaque of Sotek gives him a 5+ ward, and the Prophet of Sotek gives him any unit joined hatred of Skaven. Finally, the Master of Snakes lets him join any Jungle Swarm unit, giving him unbreakable while joined, but the snakes lose their loner and insignificant when he joins, so it's more like a real swarm of snakes. Finally, for name characters is Kroak-Gar, the big lad, on a bigger lad. He is slightly differently kitted out Old Blood, but is 1 for combat and leadership. He rocks a solid stat line with move 6 from Grimlock, weapon skill 6 and 3 for him and the mount, strength 5 and Simon, just like the rest of the Carnosaurs, toughness 6, 8 wounds, initiative 4 and 2, 5 attacks and 4 attacks, and leadership 8 for 440 points, just 20 points more than a fully kitted out Old Blood on Carnosaur, and I think that's pretty fair. Kroak-Gar is equipped with the Hands of the Gods, the Reverend Spear of Taladsa, and the plate armor, with Grimlock rocking Rending Talons and Scaly Skin. Similar to an Old Blood on Carnosaur, he has Close Order, Blood Frenzy, Cold-Blooded, Large Target, 2 Stomps, Swift Stride, Terror, and Furious Charge for Kroak-Gar. What extra skills he gets is Attuned to Beast, meaning Grimlock cannot lose Blood Frenzy once he gains it. He is the Sacred Spawning of Exotl, so he has a 5+ ward save. He has his own army, allowing him to be the general when he's not the highest leadership. If he is in a Grand Army or a Wardens of the Geomantic Web, Army of Infamy, you can take Cold One Riders as core. They get the Blessed Spawning of Itzul for no points cost, and Sorcereers can take it and have it not count against the Blessed Spawnings they can get. This gives us a cavalry army, and that makes me really happy. In terms of war gear, the Reverend Spear of Talaxia is basically a 2-wound halberd. It's only strength 6, but it should be fine with Grimlock backing you up. He has his Hand of the Gods, which is the Beam of Chotek spell, up to power level 3, and finally Rending Talons, which are, as per the Carnosaur's claws, but instead of his multiple wounds D3 only affecting monsters, it's in fact all of the time. On to generic characters, which always is a funny phrase to me. The Skink Stalker. Not gonna lie, this is more of a Skink Wood Elf Waystalker, but a little less good at combat and shooting, but still a solid piece that could assassinate models with poison attacks, evasions, move through cover, scouts, ignore cover, feign flight, and fire and flee. Multi-shots too on his javelins and warbow, and Jungle Stalker. They can take additional hand weapons and a shield, swap the javelins for blowpipes or warbows, again just to really pick stuff off. To buff the shooting even more, they can either take quick shot, move and shoot, or magical attacks as needed. I think there is an argument for each. Finally, they can take ambushers, 50 points of magical items, and 1 sacred spawning. In a unit only available in the Warhost, so it's really an army and a hero that can start up the board, giving your opponent a hard time until they make contact. And this one won't break immediately once charged, and will in fact avoid it and harass it until something bigger comes along and saves it. Now on to the infantry, and this is the first one I really wanted to bring into the old world. A little different from 6, but it's the same unit. Red Crested Skinks are Skinks' answer to the Empire Greatswords. They are move fast, but light as Skinks, as they are move 6, weapon skill BS and strength 3, toughness 2, again they are Skinks, 1 wound, initiative 4, and 1 attack with leadership 6. They are rocking hand weapons, shields, and light armor, with the options for standard, command, drilled, and great weapons, with the champion getting 25 points of magic items. They are really not likely to survive combat. They don't initiate, but with move 6, initiative 4, they're basically cavalry, and with special skills, you really want them to be on the initiative just to clear through stuff. They have cold-blooded, close order, blessed spawning of Sotek or furious charge, poison attacks, and red crests. That is potentially a lot of great weapons on initiative 4, or hand weapon poison attacks on initiative 7, i.e. striking everything outside of Elf Lords first. If you want to bring them outside the Skink Warhost, then you get which is where you get a lot of the buff from things like banners and better chiefs, you'll need units with the blessed spawning of Sotek, and they are in the rare slot. Skink cohorts are the wee brothers of the Red Crests, and generally was baffling they were not in the legacy army list. They are Skink skirmishers, except not skirmishers, with the options to take shields, short bows, and throwing spears if they wish. They get full command and can swap to open order and take 1 sacred spawning. Only available to the Skink Warhost and get the regimental and detachment options. Unlike Skink skirmishers, they only get aquatic, but get warband and horde, meaning they're basically scaly goblins. Star Chamber Guards are mentioned as chosen equivalents for the Lizardmen, and gain weapon skills 5 and a smaller minimum size than Temple Guards, gaining a 6+ ward and a halberd with more AP and magic attacks. Really, I wanted something a little more buff and capable at killing. If you haven't guessed, I love Temple Guard and Cold One Riders, so I smashed them together to make Temple Guard Riders. Better cold ones who get the blessed spawning of Itzel or reroll stupidity, but fulfill the role of demigryphs as tanky cavalry, taking weapon skill 5 halberds, armor height 2 over 1, and stubborn shield wall with innate drill. This is a combat cavalry. You find a brick and you fling a huge number of attacks at it and murder it. With strength 5 halberds, you're probably chunking monstrous infantry and maybe even looking at harassing regular monsters. Maybe they should have Guardian, but I like them as blunt chargers a la Bretonia. Maybe I really should just buy Bretonia. Horn 1 riders are Skinks on Horn 1s, so faster, not stupid cold ones. They are heavy cavalry, but skirmishing ones with having carved spears and light armor, shields, armor tides, but they are skirmishers with open orders and options for javelins if need be. They can have sacred spawnings and are only in the Skink Warhost as their cavalry option, and I think they do that really well. They're not great in combat, but they have 3 attacks on weapon skill 3, all on strength 4 on the charge, and can rock a 4+ save on toughness 3. Comparable to elf nonsense, but not better than cold ones, who I think are really good barring the idiocy problem. Good for a light army that can really be reinforced with things like characters on stegodons and carnosaurs. Finally, for new units, I wanted to update Skink heroes, not in an errata way, but I wanted to give them the option to use Horn ones, and the Skink priest may take spells from the lore of the jungle, which I'll get into a bit. Overall, all these new additions don't really step on any toes regarding options, and those things added to the Grand Army, Mounted Skink Heroes and Red Crested Skinks should be wonderful additions. Sacred Spawnings or Blessed Spawnings are the system from at least 6th edition where you can upgrade your Source Warriors and a few other units that would give some minor buffs from specific deities in the Lizardmen pantheon. I was originally hesitant to add this customization to the old world, but with the new Knightly Order's Army of Infamy coming out, I feel now much less bad. There are some few rules to this, but it's broadly simple. Source Warriors, Pterodon Riders, Ripperdactyl Riders, Croxigors, and Cold One Riders may take 1 blessing. Temple Guards, Scar Veterans, Skink Chiefs may take 2. Saurus Old Bloods and Skink Priests may take 3. No blessing may be taken twice, and the blessing of Old Ones can only be taken once per army. Finally, you gotta share 1 blessing to be able to join a unit with blessings. Simple, as was translating all but 2 of these. These are taken more or less straight from 6th edition, and the points, like everything in this book, is provisional, and I'm wanting some feedback because I need it. The Blessed Spawning of Eitzel was originally the rule that was required for Saurus to mount Cold Ones, which is a boring rule, and I'm not adding it back, so instead I've tweaked it to address some issues. Once per turn, you may reroll Stupidity or Impetuous, which I think should help our cavalry out immediately. The Blessed Spawning of Sunchi is lifted straight from 6. The Water God gives us Aquatic, and +1 initiative, which I think will be huge for the army overall, allowing our Saurus to always be striking simultaneously on the charge, or in some case while being charged if you have a Bastiladon nearby. I like this option. I want to mess around with it. Blessings of Talax Coatl is immunity to psychology. Kinda strong, but it's basically only cold-blooded ++, which is fine and will be good on big bricks of warriors. Blessing of Chotek is a roll an extra d6 for pursuit and drop the lowest, making our pursuits more consistent and we can keep up in combat. Probably won't come up much, maybe on Kroxigor or Temple Guard you're using aggressively, or maybe on Pterodons to catch fleeing units. Blessed Spawning of Honchi is much better, giving foot models move through cover, which now could be good on Kroxigors or Big Bricks if you want to go cull some Wood Elves. It's nice to have, but the units that need it have it, and other units that might like it don't really have the sacred spawnings for it, unless you take characters. Blessed Spawning of Topek has gone through like 2 iterations now, but even now I'm not happy with it. It's the Mark of Tzeentch, and honestly I hate it. It's in 6 it was Power Dice, but that's not a thing anymore. Maybe I just make it rerolls for wizards, and in units get a 6+ ward save and spells. I really don't want to split it, but that might be better. Blessed Spawning of Sotek is basically 1-1 what it used to be, but now we have a rule for that, and it's called Furious Charge. So that's what it grants. It's only for skinks and Kroxigars, since that's probably fair. It won't really get much use other than to go to chiefs and priests into red crests, and to make Kroxigors a little better, which they really should be. The Blessed Spawning of Quetzal is a +1 bonus to armor for the unit. I think this is going to be a popular one on the Big Lord, since we have good armor, but it's very static, not really better than a 4+ in our armor outside our stupid cold ones. This gives our combat lords a range of options, or changes the mass on Saurus Warriors and Temple Guards, since they are now 3+ toughness 4, which means hand weapons get a little less good. Not much, but I think enough that people will move to great weapons to handle lizards. Finally is the Blessed Mark of the Old One. 1 character per army gets D3 +1 rerolls on any D6 that relates to them. That's spellcasts, to hit rolls, leadership, armor saves. It's here to be really useful and make that old blood just designed to do something specific. Overall, I don't think these are amazing and super strong, but a lot of little things to shore up our units that need it and make it more reliable, and there may be some that are competitively the best, like the initiative armor or whatever, but I think it's a good addition. Now on to magical items, which is also largely ports of some of the old Lizardman items updated to the old world, and to be honest, I can kind of see why some of them were left behind. They weren't that interesting, so I've tweaked some of them, but there are still a few duds I might tweak again. Magical weapons, I brought back 4 classes with the Blade of Realities, Burning Blade of Chotek, the Dagger of Sotek, and the Stegodon Spear. The Blade of Realities has decided to make it a little different from the Blade of Sunchi and sit between that and the Piranha Blade, preventing ward save with AP 1 and multiple wounds 2 for 35 points. This should be better pointed and nice for our heroes to chunk through stuff in a challenge. The Burning Blade of Chotek, or the Thermite Blade, is a big FU to armor with strength +1, 2 AP and armor being 2, with burning and magical attacks, making it really want to find something in heavy or plate armor and a shield and just tear it open. God help you if you're not a 4-up or better. The Dagger of Sotek is a basic but a classic, causes fear and scaving and has killing blow. Give it to a skink chief and run up and try and kill something important on a 6+. Finally is the Stegodon Spear, which is nice to see, but it is basically a lance for skink chiefs on Stegodons, which is fine, but the big buff, and keeping up with the theme that the dinosaurs do the real damage, it can grant AP 2 and armor bane 1 to the Stegodon's impact attacks, which is a huge buff worth the 35 points. I would put it on a skink priest for that strength 6 AP 2 auto hits. For magic armor, I've brought back another two basic ones. The Stegodon Helm, which grants a +1 to armor and leadership for skinks, meaning they can get up to a 4+ with a shield or a 3+ with the blessing spawning as well. Extremely common magical item called the Maiming Shield, which grants an extra attack that is magical and has AP1, which would be nice on champions or old bloods you want to throw even more dice with. I struggled a little bit with the following sections, but eventually settled on what I have. Some brought back, some developed by me. First, talismans, and we have a hard act to follow, but I have two. The Amulet of Itzel for a one-time use for a 2+ ward save against the first wound suffered, which could be useful to not die to cannon fire or a big slap. The Amulet of Sotek is basically Witch Brew for skink heroes and any unit he joins, including his mounts, getting Frenzy, which is strong when you can stick him in Red Crested Skinks or Saurus Knights, but at the same time it's 35 points on a 45 point hero who is not very strong in melee or in general, so I'm going to let this one lie for now since more attacks are our thing. Also, you can't lose Frenzy, which is nice. My issue with the Arcane items were that the interesting ones are already in the book or stolen by other armies, and now the Cube of Darkness is in the Elf book. We are being looted in the wild. Anyway, okay, 3-ish Arcane items. The tablets of the old ones are basically those tablets from the Toon Kings. I didn't really have a good idea other than to take them and use them, since the floating +1 would be nice to have, particularly on skink priests who are likely to be so low casting values and occasionally may want to drop a nasty spell from battle magic. I can see this one having its uses, but it's a weak idea, so please feel free to suggest something better. Diadem was stolen from us by the colonizers of Britonia. The French are at it again, and their version is fine, but ours is different. Back in 6 it bumped magical dice, but I've decided to lean on the fluff of controlling the winds of magic and give it bound drain magic at level 3, which I think is pretty nice to throw down now and then. I know it's not the best spell, but if it's for 30 points it might be worth it on a skink priest or something. Finally is the Rod of Storms, which was once previously a bound level 5 and 6 magic missile, but instead I've made it a once per turn buff to combat spell ranges. Honestly, I might swap this name to something else and bring this back as a super powerful once per game weapon like its lore, which could be hilarious. Enhanced items are a little more fun with the Horn of Kaigon, which grants all mounts Frenzy, which I liked when I read it, so it immediately came into the book. Is this going to be really good? Maybe, but it will be funny. Charm of the Jaguar Warrior is a bit meh, but it could be funny for a movement 9 Saurus Oldblood or even Super Skink Chief. Banehead is the grudge mechanic from the Dwarf Royal Clans, so it's a magical item. Love the idea, leans into the Lizardmen being more Mesoamerican. Finally is the magical standards, and these I did really enjoy making. The Plaque of Domination had to be tweaked a little, so I think it's a little more fair, but should an enemy miscast or be dispelled with an unbinding, they gain stupidity. Limited to command range, but it's worth remembering in Lizardmen, our battle standard bearers are usually large targets, and that's 18 inches around a slan, where you can be made very dumb. Sign of Sotek was added at the last minute since I saw it in the Red Host of Tehenowen, and I wanted it here. When you charge, you get to reroll your wound rolls. That plus Furious Charge means skinks can now do a lot more damage in the name of the Serpent God. Banners of Sacrifice Standards. Had a fun time around the fluff for this one, for the plus X points for captured banners. It's just nice, something nice to have. Finally, the one I'm really happy with is the Silvery Slan Death Mask. Had fun writing the fluff for this one as well, since it lets you pick at the start of your turn magic resistance minus D3 or D3 combat res, so you can go ahead and get a bit more tactical as needed, and I think it's well worth the 75 points since you get some really good flexibility. Finally is the spell lore I wanted to add to Lizardmen, the lore of the jungle for skink wizards. It's a buffing lore with a few hexes and damage and a bit of a mishmash. No templates except for one. Starting with the signature spell Stegodon's Strength. On a 8+ and within 12, until the start of your next turn subphase, you give the target a +1 to their strength and toughness. Nice and strong, and will make the Lizardmen roided out in combat. Next up is Pterodon's Call, a long-range missile that does 2d6 strength 2 hits with armor bane, and basically just simply to harass smaller units and maybe plink off wounds from swarms and minor units. It is also casting value 7, so you can get it off with the skink easily enough. Bastiladon's Shell is another enhancement that casts on a 9+ in a 15-inch range that grants characters a 3+ armor save and impervious defense, or essentially they can't be flanked. This can be really good on a oh no, save my Stegodon, or buff the old blood a little better. Spear of Sotek is Pan's Spear redone and is a through and through magic missile with strength 5, AP 2 and multiple wounds 2. We don't have a bolt thrower. I'd like that in this army, so this is it. Could be more useful when infantry get good. Call to Feed was a fun one for me to write because I wanted a hex that buffed your units, and the fluff of making a unit so delectable it makes the Lizardmen go feral was hilarious. The 10+ hex with a range of 12 inches. Until the end of your next turn, all models engaged in combat with that target get extra attack 1. If they're not in base to base, they don't get it. Additionally, units must pursue if the target gives ground, etc., because they're too tasty not to. Curse of the Troglodon's Vision inflicts a -1/2 hit in shooting and combat if you get an 11+ 12-inch hex off. You've blinded them like a bunch of bats. Finally, and my favourite spell, is the Maw of the Dread Saurian. Is this the vomit spell from Trolls? Yes, but I don't care, it's hilarious. It's an assailment spell on an 8+, drop a flame template with the broadside to the caster. Any model, friend or foe, suffers a single strength 7 wound, with AP 2 and multiple wounds 2 if they are a monster. You summon a huge jaw and you slam it in your foes. Exactly how Lizardmen should be working. And that was a fairly long video about a supplement that I made for the Old World. And I hope you enjoyed it, because I did writing it, and I'll try to enjoy playing it, and let me know what you think of it, and if you're willing to run it. If you do, let me know how it goes. With that, remember to like and subscribe for more Infinity and Old World stuff, and as always, I'll see you next time.